Welcome to the Confidence Through Health podcast. My name is Jerry Snyder. As a health, wellness, and sports performance coach, my goal each week is to bring you experts to help you take control of your health and build your self-confidence. Thanks for including me today on your journey to better health. I want to say thank you to Social Media Cowboys for sponsoring this week's episode of the Confidence Through Health podcast. If you need help with a website, if you need social media needs for your business, if you need help with AdWords, SEO, all those things that you know you should be doing, but you are too busy to do or you're too confused about, they are the experts that you need in your corner. If you're interested in launching a podcast, such as mine, they help me edit my podcast and do a fantastic job making sure that all of the technical side of it is handled and we launch a nice, neat, edited podcast episode each week. So I want to thank Social Media Cowboys for their continued sponsorship of the Confidence Through Health podcast. You can find them at socialmediacowboys.com, or you can find them as well with other sponsors at confidencethroughhealth.com. So Kyler, I want to thank you for being a guest on the Confidence Through Health podcast.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Jerry.
So one of the things that I saw that y'all are doing, and you've been in the health and wellness space for a while now too, so you've seen how these things have changed over the past few years in a lot of different technologies that have come out and given us more of a roadmap, if you will, of what each person needs, right? And like that's one of the things that y'all are doing is working with these DNA test kits. And I know a lot of people have probably heard about them, but how beneficial are they, first off, like for the average person?
Yeah, great question. Genetic testing has been around for a while now. The science behind genetic testing is constantly adapting, and there's more and more science coming out specific to genes and how they affect different people. But I think that it's probably one of the most overlooked areas when it comes to the wellness picture. People will sign up and try a different diet, or they'll try medications, or they'll try different lifestyle changes, exercise routines. But at the base of it all, a lot of this is going to be played out by their genetics.
Right.
And so without that playbook, or without understanding, hey, how does my body respond to a certain exercise type, or how does my body respond to a specific food group, it can make those decisions really hard to know, okay, should I be doing this form of exercise or should I be eating this food, without knowing your body's response. And so when it comes to how beneficial these testing kits are, and genetic testing in general, it's kind of like it's opening your own playbook of, hey, this is how I should adapt my lifestyle, and here's the rules for my life based off of my genes. And you're no longer having to play that comparison game of, well, my friend looks like this, or even my sister looks like this, right? Like your genes are going to be different compared to everybody else's, and you'll finally have some of those answers specific to you that you can now start making some more tailored decisions, compared to just having to guess behind a lot of those things. So I would say, when it comes to, the wellness game in general, this is an underlooked area.
Mm-hmm.
I think one that's going to grow rapidly over the next couple of years, just as more and more science develops. People will want to understand, they want specifics to themselves and more tailored approaches. So yeah, I'm really excited for what's to come. Really excited that we've been able to bring this product to market, and for the impact it's able to have for customers.
Well, and that just shows how personalized, like exercise, fitness, wellness, nutrition, and for those of us that have been in the industry and understand it, we understand those things. And I often tell people, like, I can give you something to do that's going to get you 80% there without knowing anything about what's inside your body. But the other 20%, it may work great. It may be like, you may hit that plateau and be like, why isn't this working for me? Right. And it's that other 15 to 20% of the ball game that can be very unique to each individual. And so just trying something that, hey, this worked for the other 10 people I know, and it doesn't work for you. And then that, for the people that are really struggling to get healthy, right? That frustration, that mind game, then just sends you in this like turmoil, and just like, it can be so frustrating.
Yeah. And I think what's difficult, is there's always that comparison game where especially with social media or even, family, friends, and you see the results they may have had on a specific program or fitness type, and then you adopt that same program or fitness regime and you don't see similar results, it's
Yeah.
kind of deflating and you're
Yeah.
wondering why did it work for them and not me? And to your point, a a lot of us who have been in this space, in the fitness and nutrition space, you've probably been able to give people 80%, 90% of what they need to do. But then there's been those kind of, yeah, not in a good, not a great way of saying it, but like complex clients where it's
Mhm.
you've tried a lot of the same things that have worked for a lot of your previous clients or customers, and then it's not working with a specific individual, and that very well could just be their genetics are different, right? How
Yeah.
they respond to that type of fitness regime doesn't really their body doesn't respond well to that, or
Yeah.
a specific for macronutrients and calorie counting and those kind of things. We know the general guidelines. There's been a lot of general guidelines out there of like, hey, here's roughly what you should eat from a macronutrient perspective. But now you can tailor them a lot more specifically to
Yeah.
their genes.
Yeah.
That carb window has always been very wide of, hey, you could be on the low end of the spectrum or higher end of the spectrum. But really, what should my carb intake be? And that can be a game changer for people when they can finally fine tune that to themselves and understand what that should be. So yeah, to your point, a lot of people in the space have seen and know, hey, here's a lot of the tools I can use, but there's that, last 20% that can be really difficult and to optimize for people. And so
Right.
this is where we can kind of open the door and give them more answers and give them more
Yeah.
clarity behind, okay, I'm doing all of that stuff. And now I can add one or two other things. And I finally had broken those last couple
Right.
barriers down to lose that extra 10 pounds or to find those gains that I was looking for elsewhere. So
Yeah.
yeah, genes really can be the final kind of tool in that tool belt to get the last couple goals
Right.
accomplished.
Well, and it's really something that everybody should be moving towards, I think, doing these, like, especially if you've been somebody who's struggled mentally trying to figure out what to do, and nothing seems to work. That doesn't mean that nothing can work, right? It just means
Yeah.
that, okay, that's where this really comes in to be beneficial, because it's like, okay, let's really figure out what you need, because there's there's cases where you may be in love with a certain food, and it could be a healthy food, and it could just be wreaking havoc in your system because your body just doesn't like it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, exactly. And I think that you know, what's tough is you may know that subconsciously. Okay,
Mhm.
this, maybe I shouldn't eat as many carbs, or you have that thought in your mind of avoiding starches. But then once the answers are clear,
Mhm.
and this, hey, here is the actual picture. Um, it's kind of like the final nail in the coffin of like, great, I kind of thought that way, maybe, or you've kind of find the complete opposite, right? Maybe
Yeah.
people have been trying a low carb diet for years, and then they find out I actually don't metabolize fat super well, and I need to eat more carbs, and that's going to be the changing factor for them. Um, and so, yeah, to your point, I think for so many people, this should be something that should be more widely adopted. And I think I can understand, it's a growing field. I was first exposed to it almost 10 years ago, where there wasn't a ton of information out there, right? There wasn't
Yeah.
that many genes that we understood and how they impacted things when it comes to nutrition and fitness. And over time, as more science has emerged, we're able to make those changes and be able to classify more genes underneath these categories and understanding, okay, yes, this gene does play a role in carbohydrate intake, and this gene does play a role in fitness types, where that didn't exist 10 years ago. And I think
Yeah.
in 10 more years time, there's so many genes and there's so many snips of genes out there, that as science, more and more science emerges, it's
Mhm.
only going to get better. It's only
Yeah.
going to get more fine tuned. You're only going to get more context to your genetic results. And so, you know, they're defined, they're there, they're locked in. It's just going to be a matter of, getting more and more science to uncover
Yeah.
more and more about our genes as this industry grows. So
Right.
super exciting. And I do love the aspect that it can be so tailored for everybody.
Right. So, and with that tailor for everybody piece, like is there something, because I mean, for the people that have been paying attention and like, okay, more and more of these testing kits are coming out, right? More and more places are coming out with them. What should somebody be looking for to know that like, okay, this is legit. This is not somebody that's just going to feed me and give me answers, right? That's going to give me realistic answers that I know I can trust and move forward with.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think that as more and more of these, testing kits are coming out and more companies are popping up that are providing the service, I think a lot of it comes down to what is everything that you're getting? Are you just getting a report of the genes that you have, right? Do
Mhm.
they give you context on how to act after the fact, right?
Right.
You could find out, hey, I have, this variant of this gene, and they give you just kind of some basic context, and then it's up to you to really try to teach yourself. That's not the best experience.
Right.
I would look towards the platforms that are saying, hey, great, you have this gene and this is how, this is the variant that you're expressing, and this is the actions you need to take, right? Okay, one of my favorite ones to look at is like carbohydrate intake. That's just such a polarizing topic for people.
Right.
It's such a broad range. um, and in that case, there's one gene that shows you how many copies of that gene. The more copies you have, the more likely you are to metabolize carbohydrates well. And then there's other genes that'll say if you have this specific variant, you're more likely to metabolize carbohydrates well. And not just getting that information of like, oh, okay, great, you metabolize carbohydrates well, or you don't.
Right.
Let's say you don't, right? What else are you getting from this test, right? From the
Right.
results from the test. Okay, well, how do I act on that? I don't
Yeah.
metabolize carbohydrates very well. What should I do, right?
Yeah.
Um, that's one thing we've really tried to institute in ours is a whole library of resources of, oh, you don't metabolize carbohydrates very well. Here's a lower carb diet that you can look at and follow that, matches along with what your results have
Right.
said. That's what I think's been missing for a lot of people. That's what I think's been missing in the past is how do I take action on this?
Right.
You can sit down and look at it and think that's really cool, but does the person take action? Do they actually
Yeah.
make some changes, or do they know how to? Because it can be overwhelming. You're finding out a lot of information about your body, and it can be overwhelming to try to think, well, I just learned this, and this. What do I start with? What's going to make the most impact? That's what we're trying to help solve for people as well, as giving them extra tools, extra resources,
Right.
more information inside of their results, which I think has been missing in the past. I think that's going to become more and more relevant in the future, just because that's what's needed for this space is how do I
Yeah.
act upon my results now?
Right. Well, and I've mentioned this little scenario before in talking to people. My wife, we had her do a test several years back with a doctor, and the doctor had no idea what the test was. Just
Yeah.
a standard family practice doctor. And she was like, I don't know what, and I was like, no, I need this because I need to know some things that are going on. And from a functional medicine standpoint, it's a standard test that's done, right? Well, the doctor gets the results and she's like, here you go. I don't know what to do with this. So I say that to say, like, how from a standard traditional medicine physician standpoint, are they are they on board with these types of tests? Do they understand, or is this something that's still considered, if you will, fringe in that healthcare space?
Yeah, I would. That's a great question, and I think that it's probably more on that fringe side of
Mhm.
things, just because it's not something commonly known, right?
Yeah.
I think if you were to go to your primary care physician and ask them, "Hey, I just found out I have this gene, and it's telling me this," they that's not something they deal with in their day
Right.
to day, right?
Right.
Um, and so I'd say for those that are really passionate about this space, they'll have a better understanding about it. But I think that's what's tough and what's difficult about this is there's not a ton of uh, continued support after the
Mhm.
fact, right? Hey,
Yeah.
how do I act on this? Just what I was mentioning earlier. How do I continue to take action on this?
Right.
If you were to sit with one of if your primary care physician, they may not know. They may, but I'd venture to say most don't, because it may be on that fringe spectrum.
Right.
And I think that, as again, 10 years ago, drastically different. If you were to take a genetic test back then, there wasn't much much going on. To today, a lot more information is known, and then I think in a couple more years, it's going to be even more widely accepted because the evidence will just be so transparent. So there. And I think that that's what we're getting to. I think you'll see it get more and more adopted. It'll come off that fringe realm and just be more of something that people start to recognize. I think you'll see dietitians adopting it more, personal trainers, all of it as and obviously there's more certifications coming out for coaches in general to be able to be trained on genetics and how to, interpret the results from these tests and discuss those with their clients. There's various certifications out there for that. And I think that will only grow in number as it's more adopted and people understand it. I think that's another thing too, is it's not widely talked about, at least in my opinion. I think that some people know it's there. I think that more on the ancestry side things than anything else. But when you're talking about how much sleep do I need and how does my body respond to stress and how should I eat and fitness and, all of those things, I don't think people realize. They know that their genetics play into it, but they don't realize that they can get answers to that yet. Right. So, to your point, I think that's a great question. I think that, it's starting, it's happening. I think there's a lot of other companies out there that are doing it more on like the blood testing side as of right now, where people are going in frequently and having frequent labs and analyzing those with their providers. And I think that genes is going to be that next thing that starts to be visited heavily within the space.
Yeah. And you mentioned earlier, and I totally get this from the if somebody is aware of it, is like the epigenetics piece of it, like turning on and turning off genes, right? And the things that we do, but like the gene. So if you get a DNA test and find out what your genes are and what you're susceptible to, as far as like and things that are happening, those genes. Those genes don't change, right? It's just how they act change based on what we do to them. Correct? Am I saying that correct?
I believe so. And that's not my full expertise, not being a geneticist with that. But yes, from what are with our reports, you're going to get a list of, hey, these are your genes. This is the variants that you have displayed, specific to a SNP is what they're called. And then they're, somewhat locked in and you're going to be able to make continuous action on those. I think that with one of the things that we're trying to do and with the lab that we partner with, as more evidence arises, we'll make changes, right? So I think that's one thing to take into note, right? Is okay, yes, you have your you have your own DNA and your own genes, but the evidence supporting your response to that may change over time, as more tests and trials are done, and we'll update that, right? So for all of our customers as well, they have a portal. We give them the results, and as we get more information and we get more clarity around specific genes and how they interact with somebody, we'll update their account with us, and they'll see those updates. So it's not stagnant. I think that's another thing that's changed within the space is, a lot of people have probably been sent or had done one of these and they got a PDF, and then they've got this 60-page PDF, and so to your point about like things don't change, the space will change, right? We'll get more evidence and we'll be able to do, we'll be able to make those modifications. And that's another thing I would just recommend to people is finding, a test that you trust that is going to make those updates for you, so that, hey, you've done it, you've had the lab, get you your results, what those are, but make sure that you have somebody that cares about constantly updating you as science emerges, so that you know how to make those actions. So it's not a static PDF, but you're able to make those changes. So great call out. And I think that that's what I would recommend is there's going to be updates in the field. So make sure that you find somebody that pushes those updates to you to get the most bang for your buck.
Yeah. But it's unlikely that you're going to have to be like you mentioned, going in for blood tests and doing things like that's not what this is about, because it's like, the blood test is going to show you, are you effectively changing the response of the genes, but not necessarily your genes aren't going to change. Right. It's like, that's who you are. But being able to track, am I actually making movement? Okay, I know this is what's supposed to happen. because as you know, and I know, like it movement, like everybody wants the scale to be the defining piece of movement and what's going on in your body, but that's just such a minor report back of what's truly going on. Is your body composition changing? Is your bones density improving? Is your muscle growth improving? All those things that are more health related than, is the scale moving up and down, which I totally get. Is That's a visual and it's something that people want to see happen. But the way I do things and tell people is, like, typically that's one of the last things that you actually will see happen if you're actually making good progress.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think that that's where a lot of people get fixated for sure. And you'll see those physical adaptations. You'll see the scale move, depending on the changes you're trying to make in your life. And, going back to a blood work, for example, if you were to continually do blood work, you would see those biomarkers change within your lab results. And then that's one piece. Obviously, there's the different, fitness or nutrition regimes you're doing, but then there's that genetic piece that kind of needs to tie it all together to where hey, the scale maybe didn't change this week for me, but I know that I ate according to how I should based off of my genes, right? Like my body,
Right.
how my body wants me to react to these things. And so I think that's another thing that gives people confidence, because that scale can be, if we're talking weight loss, that can be just such a fixation for people. If we're
Right.
talking muscle growth, they're looking at, okay, did I actually see that definition or change? Um, but if you're able to understand some things about your body's blueprint, you're going to feel more confident knowing, hey, maybe I didn't see a change this week, but I know that I did what I was supposed to, which
Right.
is kind of a relief for a lot of people. Where I think that
Yeah.
without that knowledge, they can only, if they're only trying to gain muscle, they're trying to lose weight, they're just going to continually look at the scale or their muscle change, and that can be daunting. That could be
Yeah.
difficult. That can be where the mind games come into play for people.
Yeah. And from a longevity standpoint, like, because that's obviously a buzzword over the last couple of years in the
Yeah.
health space, right? Is longevity and trying to
Yep.
get, you know, what is that, all the biohacking things and all this stuff. Um, and you can get lost in that space. And but to truly know, like, am I doing the things that are gonna improve my quality of life as I age? Which I think is more important than trying to say I'm gonna live to a certain amount, but like making sure those are quality years. Like, this is a vital piece, I think, of getting there, right? Like, knowing what your blueprint is, because then you're not gonna be doing something that's gonna all of a sudden hijack something down the road because your genes are like, hey, I'm just waiting for that tipping point to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. Longevity has for sure been a buzzword. And I think that that's something that, you know, we should all find passion in to some extent. Who doesn't want to try to live a healthier and longer life? Because I think there's your health span and your lifespan, right? And so not
Right.
just increasing your lifespan, but actually increasing those healthy years, the quality of life. Um, this can for sure unlock some of those doors where you're curious, okay, how much sleep do I really need? Right. Like
Right.
there's going to be those classic recommendations, but knowing, hey, you may not need quite as much sleep, and you may not need to over stress when you get your Aura ring that tells you had a terrible sleep score last night because you only got 6 hours instead of eight
Right.
hours. But then, at the genetic level that your body does respond a little bit better to less sleep.
Yeah.
You're not going to be as concerned, right? But I think all of those tools are really, magical when it comes to the longevity space of,
Mhm.
whether it's a medication, whether it is something like a fitness tracker, having, a blueprint to your genes, when it comes to longevity, and kind of tying those all in. That is where I think people are going to see some of these health span gains, where they're going to
Yeah.
live a much more quality life compared to just extending the years. They're going to have a really high quality because they've got their genes. They're making those, smart choices based off of those when it comes to exercise, nutrition, and sleep. And so, I think the impact that this has in the longevity field is huge, just
Yeah.
because you're finally able, if you, again, goes back to that piece of, if you take action on your results and you
Right.
follow what you've learned, then you'll see some for sure quality changes.
Yeah. And so speaking of the action piece and taking action, right? Like, so you've got the results and you're looking at them. Like, is that something that y'all have seen as like a does it help people like get over that hump of, oh, I'm trying something, I'm not going to last very long, I'm going to have to restart, or you know, I failed and so just give up. That we all know a lot of people struggle with. Um, does having this information, have y'all seen that this helps people get past that point?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think what's so interesting about this space, right, is there's just a lot of fads, and I think people can get wrapped up in those, and so then they think, oh, this is finally going to be the thing that works for me, right? And
Right.
there was the keto diet, and there's been different exercise types, and
Hmm.
the rise and of boutique fitness and different boutique fitness styles, and knowing, okay, should I go and participate in that? Is that going to work for me? I think that's where it kind of limits the excuses for people. Oh, I know, I should eat lower carbs because my genetics have told me that, or I know that I'm going to respond well to strength training compared to cardio training. My genetics have told me that. I think that that's one of, when I look at this for people and the, whether they take action or not, it limits the excuses that you can now make because
Hmm.
hey, there's so many options out there,
Right.
and there's so many different types of gyms and meal plans and um, diets and all those things. Now you're able to really consolidate those and say, well, hey,
Yeah.
I finally know, and I can't say, well, I tried this, it didn't work. Well, you tried this and you knew you shouldn't have done it because your genes told you not to.
Right.
That kind of goes away, right? So
Yeah.
I think that that's what it helps with people is, I think, in our field in general, it's always going to be difficult to help people take action.
Mhm.
That's, you know, fitness trainers, gyms, everybody experience that. Doctors do, and
Yeah.
trying to get their patients to take action. Um, but it kind of removes excuses now
Yeah.
is how I look at it. So
Yeah. Well, and it's sort of like, my son is in junior high, and he went out for the track team, and he's a great sprinter. He doesn't push himself enough, and so he only when he runs against like four or five other guys, he just pushes enough to beat those guys, right? But he doesn't run
yeah,
against the clock, right? And so he got upset because they put him on the distance team, and he's like, "But I'm a sprinter." But he kept getting beat by the sprinters who were in different races, like time wise. And so they're like, "Oh, well, the only spot we got for you is for the distance." And he's like, he hated it. And I'm looking at him going, "Yeah, your muscle makeup, your body, it's not made to be a distance runner. Not just his mind didn't want to do it." Um, and and that's sort of the same thing you're talking about. Is like you can beat your head up against the wall doing the wrong thing. It can still be a good thing,
yeah,
right? It can be something that works for other people. But like if it's not what your genes are telling you is what you need, and you can do all the quote right things and not get results.
yeah, yeah. And to your point earlier, Jerry, that you mentioned, you can be doing 80%, right? Like
Mhm.
you could be exercising daily, you can be eating healthy, you can be doing all of these things. And there's just that 20% that's still not clicking,
Mhm.
to what you were mentioning about your son of like, hey, like a lot of people know, hey, this is my body type, or this is how I respond to some extent.
Yeah.
But, you know, it finally just removes those barriers of saying, I've been doing this fitness regime for the last 3 years and I've been eating this way and I've just not been able to get over this hump for months and months and months. And then you look at it and you find out that all those are great and they got you 80% of the way there.
Right.
Now you can really dial in, oh, maybe I just need to add some strength training in. I wasn't really doing that. And
Yeah.
now it unlocks that last 20% for you. Right.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think that that's what's really exciting about this is whether you're starting out fresh or you've hit a hump, or you've hit your goal but you worry about you know going back, on the
Right.
using weight loss as an example, how many people, especially, in this day and age of GLP-1s, and they've lost a lot of weight, they've seen a lot of success from medication, but then they may stop. They may
Right.
stop a medication, or they may stop a fitness regime or a diet because they want to go back to kind of a normalized lifestyle for them.
Right.
What should that look like for them in the long term? Here's the blueprint now. Hey, here,
Yeah.
if you continue to follow, within these guardrails, you should be able to have great adaptations continuously for your
Yeah.
body, and to continue those results that you've seen, rather than, you in the past, other fads or diets or things like that, when coming off of those, people don't want to continue them forever, and they go back to, healthier habits, but
Right.
then they see some weight gain.
Yeah.
This can give them those fine tunings where they can live healthier habits without having to be an extremist
Right.
on those things anymore. So,
Well, and I think that's a big piece because a lot of people they'll have success on a fad,
yeah,
right? And then they get to the point where they can't do it anymore because it's not functional because they've met their weight goal. If they keep doing it, they're going to keep losing weight, and then that's not what we want, right? And so it's like so they have to make a change back to a more normal nutrition side of things. Usually is where it is, right? And so it's like, okay, I've done this fad diet, I lost the weight, and now I'm stuck. I can't. Now what do I do? And yeah, without knowing what's truly going to work for you, typically what happens is we all see it like that bounce back, right? And then the thought comes, oh, that diet didn't work for me. Well, no, that diet worked for you because it helps you get to the point where you wanted to be. You didn't know what to do past that point.
yep, yep, and
It's
100%. And I think, we're both advocates of people who are wanting to make a change, and they may try a diet, they may try a specific fad or something like that. First and foremost, love that they're willing to make a change. They take that first step, right? And then I think that is what's difficult, though, and for some people, maybe that's the final piece for them. They just find that they love a specific, diet type, and they want to eat that indefinitely, and that's great.
yeah,
But I think that there's a good majority of people that they want to start something, they want to put in that effort in the short term to find that success, but then they know it's not something that's maybe sustainable for them in the long
right,
term. Aspects of it are right. If they learn to start exercising daily, they can
right,
maintain that, but they may not be able to do 90 minutes a day for the rest of their life. It may have to be 45.
right.
But how do you maximize that? How do you go from 90 minutes to 45 minutes of exercise and make sure that you're getting the best 45 minutes of exercise possible?
Right.
That's where you can get some answers from your genetics, right? And
Yeah.
um, I think that, we're Shed's a big advocate of use the tools at your disposal, whether it's medication, whether it's exercise, whether it's a diet type, and then find the thing that's going to work for you in the long term. And that's why we've launched our genetic test. Is we want to help people
Yeah.
understand, hey, this is something you can do in the long term, and these are the lifestyle changes you can make that, you're no longer questioning, how should I use my 45 minutes at the gym?
Right.
What should I continue to eat, and what food groups and things like that. We want to give people those answers.
Yeah. Well, and that's the other piece of what I love what y'all are doing is it's not just, hey, we've got a kit, here's the answers, here's maybe a little bit of a snippet of what to do, but it's the support on the other side of, oh yeah, but you still need to make these lifestyle changes because, you know, for better or worse, the lifestyle that you led before got you here. So no matter
Yep.
what you do, if you don't change that piece or tweak some of it, you're going to wind up back here again, right? No
Yeah.
matter what else you try, because it is that fight and it's tough for people, and I get it, and it's understanding the sacrificing. Okay, I'll sacrifice that little piece now to get what I can get in the future.
Yeah. 100%. And looking at Shed as a from a global view, we work a lot with people who are on GLP-1 medications, right? And that's been such a big topic lately. And I think
Yep.
that there's so many people that it has just been a game changer for them. And
Yeah.
I love it. I love seeing it. And there's those people that want to continue using them indefinitely. And that's amazing, right?
Yeah.
If that is one of the tools that you are really comfortable with, that's great. And then I think, just in transparency, that's a large financial investment to continue
Sure.
using those. They're not cheap.
Yep.
And so when looking at this, they're like, hey, there's other tools that you can use, right? And we know there's fitness, there's exercise, there's nutrition that come into play, but can we give you more specifics to that so that, hey, when you make these changes, you want to come off a medication or you want to come off a different diet you were doing.
Right.
Now you know where to go. And I think that's something that, you know, I again reference, years back wasn't as easy for people to comprehend, and maybe they didn't, wasn't as comfortable. And I had been exposed to genetic tests years ago where it was just showing one gene and hey, based off this one gene, you're going to metabolize carbs this well. It's
Yeah.
just one gene, right?
Right.
Now we know that there's dozens of genes that can play into how you metabolize carbohydrates. And I think that that's where, again, we'll give them those answers. They'll be able to make it. And then as they continue as more research comes out, they can continue to modify just,
Right.
and hyper focus on those things that they've learned about themselves.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's the biggest key is being able to know at any point, like, if I do these things, this is how my body's going to react. Right. Like
Yeah.
that is such a game changer. Like, because then it does become, it's a behavior thing, and it's okay. And I'm not saying you can't ever have those fun times or those, snacks or whatever, like, because people ask me all the time as a health guy, and they're like, do you ever eat dessert? Do you ever eat ice cream? And I'm like, yeah, I eat ice cream, but I usually do it after I do a race. Like, I'll do a race, I'll have ice cream, celebrate, move on. It's not ice cream every night, and
Yeah.
because I know what that does to my goals. That's not where my goals are. Um, you know, but that doesn't, just because you know all these things doesn't mean you're going to avoid all the things that you used to love.
Yeah. 100%. I think that's, you know, knowing these things and having these answers doesn't mean that you're going to only do this indefinitely, right?
Mhm.
Like you'll find out, hey, when we're looking at it, there's different areas we're looking at, and I've kind of referenced them, but we're looking at fitness, we're looking at nutrition, we're looking at sleep and stress and other longevity factors that play into this, within our kind of our total wellness kit that we look at. And
Yeah.
when you're looking at those things, it's not, from a realistic perspective, it's not saying these are the only things you should ever do indefinitely, right?
Yeah.
Because people want to live life. They want to
Sure.
have a bowl of ice cream, and they want to find enjoyment in some of those other things. But it's just gives them an answer of like, hey, this is what you should try to do. And a lot of us have talked about the 80-20 rule. It's widely adopted in the space,
Yep.
and say knowing, hey, 80, 90% of the time, if you're able to just follow what your genetics are telling you, you're going to have really great results. But
Yeah.
that doesn't mean you can't have a bowl of ice cream. Or
Right.
if, your genetics are telling you you're really great at cardio, that doesn't mean only do cardio, right? You should still
Right.
do strength training for all the other benefits that come from it.
Right.
So
Right.
yes, it's a blueprint. It gives you answers, but it's not the only thing you should ever feel like you need to do.
Yeah.
You can live life. You can enjoy those other things for sure.
Right. Yep. Yeah, because we never want to silo too much into one thing,
Yep.
because that's not good. That's not healthy on a whole nother spectrum, right?
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Hyper focusing on one thing. Yes. Your genes may tell you that, but that doesn't mean that, when we're looking at all the research outside of genetics, right? And we
Yeah.
know the benefits of strength training. And if you
Right.
find out you're really good at cardio, that doesn't mean you need to neglect strength training because there's so many
Yeah.
other benefits there. So
Right. Yep.
that's one thing to keep in mind with this is, not to hyper fixate, understand that this is kind of a playbook, but there's other plays out there to be had, from
Yeah.
other research outside of genetics.
Right. Um, so, and you've mentioned Shed a couple times, but how can people find out more information? What's the best way to do that?
Yeah, yeah. So Shed, just from who we are as a company, so we're a telehealth company. We've been around about 3 years now, and like I mentioned, we've worked a lot in the weight loss space,
Mhm.
specifically with GLP-1s, longevity as well, with longevity treatments, hair loss, all of those things. We have a supplement lineup, and then obviously our genetic tests. And what really our mission as a company when we're looking at all of those things is saying, how can we be the most complete wellness journey, right? We want to, medication is a tool, right?
Yep.
We have health coaches. They're a great tool, right? Working with a health coach. Supplements can be a great tool, understanding your genetics. And when we can piece that all together with an abundance of resources and education behind that, that's another thing we really focus on. That's who we are. That's who we're trying to be. Is we're trying to be more than just a medication. We're trying to be more than just, a supplement. We want a lot of tools, and we'll help you figure out what are the best tools to put in your toolbox for your wellness journey.
Yeah, that's awesome. So website, Instagram, what's the best way to people to connect and see what's going on?
Yep, both are TriShed. You can find us at TriShed on Instagram, TikTok, things like that, and then trished.com. Our website gives you all the information about the different treatments that we work with people on, health coaching, our supplements are all on there, our genetic tests are, and we have a sister site specifically for our supplements and genetic tests called shedsupplements.com. But yeah, that's, find us on Instagram, find us on our website. But, that's when whether it's just to learn from our blogs or some of the articles we put out, or whether it is to look at one of our programs, we just want to help people. And then I think that's kind of one of our driving forces, is just help complete that wellness journey for people. So,
right. That's awesome. Well, is there anything that we didn't cover that, like, you from a message to people that are struggling, like, you've been in this space for a while. I know you've dealt with people and seen people that just can't figure out what they should do next when it comes to their health journey. And specifically, I know weight loss is a big piece for those people, right? Like, what's the message to those people that are in that spot?
Yeah, I'd first start with saying, you're not alone. We have a community of like-minded people who are all here to support you and want to help you find the right path for you. And that's kind of our goal as Shed. And when we're looking at these different things, whether it is, a medication like a GLP-1, or if you're struggling with hair loss or anything of those things, right? We'll step in and try to help you to navigate those. But when we're looking at genetic testing specifically, I think that's where we want to give people more answers. They've tried, they maybe have tried various medications. They've tried different, exercise types. And, there's been a lot of other weight loss companies out there over the last 50 years, and they could have tried all of them. Right. But we want to help kind of peel back the curtain and say, great, some of these worked for you a little bit, but here's some other aspects according to your genetics to take into account. And I think that's what we're trying to really do for people is uncover more and give them more. And so that's what I would say to somebody who's embarking on a journey or thinking about it or in the middle of it. Know that there's more tools that you can use at your disposal. I would recommend don't hyperfixate on just one. Look at it as a toolbox that you need to have a lot of things, because different obstacles are going to come up in your life, and having more tools to overcome those obstacles is going to be the best thing you can do for yourself.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And I fully agree with that. It's like, the more that you know, right? What's that old commercial, right? The more you know, right? The more tools that you have to be able to go, okay, this happened. What do I do? Okay, well, these foods were presented to me at a buffet. What should I eat? Obviously, like, most of us would probably go, like, eat it all. But, like, we know that there's certain things that are going to trigger certain things if we know what our genes are telling us. So I love that. I love that's what y'all are doing. So, Kyler, thank you so much for being a guest. It's been great.
Oh, appreciate it, Jerry. This was fantastic. Really, really love talking about this and appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks for checking out the Confidence Through Health podcast. Please subscribe, post a review, share this episode with those you love who need a little extra help with their health journey. Visit allinhealthandwellness.com to learn more about the coaching programs that I provide. All episodes are produced by the Social Media Cowboys, your source for all online marketing needs. Go to socialmediacowboys.com for more information.